Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corpin here with STN. We're excited you made it to the podcast. It's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. By Ride, real innovation delivered with excellence. And School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. Joining me in just a little bit will be Mike Ippolito, General Manager of School Radio. We're going to be talking about safety, communications, big topics at STN Expo this year. And we're also going to be talking with Mr. Ryan Gray, editorial extraordinaire. Ryan, welcome.
Hello, Tony Nation. As always, it's great to be here.
Wonderful. So Ryan and I are going to be taking a deeper dive into some of the STN Expo topics. We got some news topics around the industry. I was out in Nashville at the NSTA meeting, which is the National School Transportation Association, the consortium of private fleet operators. They get together twice a year. This year it came together in Nashville and they gave out some great awards. I know congrats to TransFinder. They were the vendor partner of the year. They've been racking up the awards this season. So congrats to Antonio Civitella and his team. We also had the NSTA Contractor of the Year Award, which went to Palmer Bus. Shane Johnson was there. He's the general manager, and he accepted the award on behalf of Palmer Bus. So we'll have more news on that as it comes. Also, some other notable awards. We had the NSTA Distinguished Service Award, a friend of the nation, Bob Pape from Dell Transportation. He took home that award. So congrats to Bob and Dell Transportation. And the NSTA Hall of Fame, those Iron Men of the industry, Ryan, Bart Markson from We Transport, as well as Patrick Vaughn, Student Transportation of America CEO. He had announced he was retiring, and Gene Kozlowski was going to be taking over for him. So as the mantle passes from one generation to the next, it's always good to honor the people that have made a really big impact in the school transportation industry. And we appreciate NSTA for partnering with us on all of that, as well as the Contractor of the Year Award. So excited to be a part of that event and network. I feel like the networking doesn't stop, Ryan, from STN Expo to NSTA, all the state conferences. It was like a blitz this summer of conferences. I don't know about you guys out there, but I could use a vacation. There's a lot happening.
Absolutely. And here we are, school's about ready to start. So no rest for the weary, the road warriors, nation, Tony basically left Reno, and I think he went home and did some laundry and then hopped on a plane out to Nashville. I stayed here. We had a magazine to put to bed, our August issue, which I believe is out as you all in the nation are listening to this. So lots of good stories in there, photo recaps of Reno, obviously, but it's our fleet management issue. So I'm really taking a deep dive into the various topics and impacts on the industry. A lot, Tony, on AI enhanced predictive maintenance models, inventory tracking, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I know when I was speaking to a few folks out at the NSTA conference, I kind of was getting to read. There's a large contractor I was asking, and I said, how much do you spend on parts? Like, give me a sense. What are you really spending on parts? And it's tens of millions of dollars a year, right? It is a lot. And it's like, all right, how do you manage all these locations? How do you manage that inventory, your high turn inventory? There is a big money at stake. And when I was talking to him, I said, well, what would a 10% savings look like, right? And he was like, well, if we spend $3 million in savings, I would say that is a significant amount of savings if you start to manage your inventory better, make sure that you've got quality parts, you deal with price increases. He said that they've seen enormous price increases this year on equipment and parts, and it's just stuff you need. But when you really start to extrapolate for one provider to pay an additional 10%, $3 million. That's nothing to sneeze at, Ryan.
No, not at all. And and on that's on the macro level, right? And 2/3 of the industry, when you're talking about $30 million, what? I mean, that's probably 30 times what a lot of our readers their total operating or general budget is for transportation. But interestingly, in the August issue, so our senior editor Taylor Ekbatani writes on inventory, and actually from our survey, and this was from about a dozen fleet managers who drilled down and gave us this information, but on average, from a standpoint of parts, still $92,500 across 12 different operations. So let's round that up to $100,000. That's still some significant spend, and that's the third highest fiscal year spend on maintenance items at your average district. So number one, fuel, 282,000 and change, labor, 192,005, and then parts, just a tad under 100,000. But all told, when you're looking at brakes, fluids, software, tires, I mean, all of this adds up to over, $600,000 or so. So that's no chump change. And again, when we're looking at running the whole gamut of very small rural districts on up, that's still some significant money. So if the software you're using, and we're seeing all these AI enhanced models now. We were out in Indianapolis, Tony, with STN Expo East in June, and we visited Cummins and their technical center. They were showing RealWear and Google's HoloLens.
It was cool though. Taylor and I sat in on demos.
Very cool. Not cheap,
but cool.
Not cheap, but the price of that kind of stuff is coming down, and I think your average fleet in America, it's going to be many years until we're using that kind of stuff. But maybe we'll see some of that at some of the very large contractors here over the next several years. But being able to use that virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality to really, see the nooks and crannies of an engine, for example, like you're a little ant and you're right there and you're able to see the valves and whatnot, or be inside the engine. That's where industry is going. And you factor in with the AI enhanced data analysis and collection, utilizing real world data from real manufacturers over a breadth of time, so that it really pinpoints failure rates on certain parts. That's where we need to get for true predictive. And really there's not many, if any, folks out there in the school bus land that are truly using a predictive model yet, but that's what's coming. So I think that is where AI, when we use that term, and it's a very scary term, and we talked about it in Indianapolis. There was a lot of discussion around it in Reno. But I know it's been an edification for me learning more about what AI means. And AI is thrown about probably too much in society. We certainly see it in this industry, but more and more AI-enabled software is coming to the plate, and demonstrating what that does for you. And it's interestingly, we have an article coming up here online that's tied to this issue and looking at the data security aspect of it. So we had a lot of conversations on that in Reno as well, because with so much data and how cybersecurity has become such a top of mind issue for so many people, that it's extremely important that you understand how some of this works, and that you're tapped in with the experts. So more than ever, IT departments are becoming right-hand, men and women for transportation. They need to be involved, super involved in a lot of what transportation is doing, the decision making, and transportation needs to be informing IT how transportation works, how transportation needs this software to work. Because, just like with your IT guy at the office, IT folks, they're very smart, but they don't necessarily play in the real world of what we're doing day in and day out, how we need software to work. So there is that learning curve that's going to have to happen, and it's happening now in a lot of places. But very important stuff, and seeing the big picture of where technology can take transportation.
And I mean, Ryan, with all the technology, at the end of the day, it's about people, right? I mean, people and maintenance professionals, and we hear more and more, it's harder and harder to find qualified maintenance professionals to take on the jobs, and people are having to do more with less staff, and they're trying to make it work. And technology helps bridge the gap on that to some degree, but regardless, we got to appreciate our maintenance professionals. And I think we do that really well in the August issue. We highlight our garage stars, right? It's the people, the unsung heroes in the garages that make the buses work, that really are on top of things, doing innovative things within their garages to be able to maintain and manage these fleets on a daily basis. And those are the people that really deserve this appreciation and this recognition. So guys, if you haven't seen that August issue yet, because it's brand new, definitely go to the STN website, click on it, read our feature story on the garage stars, and see what some outstanding garage professionals are doing. And don't forget to give them a pat on the back. Your own garage professionals, give them some love, make them feel appreciated. I think it's a great opportunity to, when you read the magazine, to just say, hey, look, we got garage stars in our operation too. Maybe they weren't in our magazine, but we should highlight them within our own operation. I think it's really valuable to provide recognition, Ryan, and great opportunity to kind of take that, run with it, share those wins with your team, and highlight these great garage professionals. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Here's a quick message for you. Ryan, great news. The safest family of electric school buses just got bigger. Meet the STN Choice Award winning Creator, the all new Type C bus from Ride, with seating for up to 78 students and a range of over 200 miles on a single charge. The Creator joins the Dreamer and the award winning Achiever to form the most advanced lineup of electric school buses on the road today. Visit ride.co to discover the future of student transportation. That's ride.co. Ride. They're changing the way kids get to school. All right, Ryan, we're back. Let's talk about some top headlines hitting the market, Ryan. Man, we've got a lot going on in the political environment, that's for sure. I know you wrote your feature story on what is the future of the presidential election. And goodness, I think, you might as well just put your money on red or black. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, my column actually, in August. I certainly have no crystal ball. I don't know how this is all going to shake out, but it has been an extremely interesting, I'll say, last several weeks. I mentioned in my article that I was planning this OEM panel where we were looking at the pathway toward 2030 with the engine regs from EPA and the push for zero emissions. And that one was a tricky one because, again, no one has a crystal ball. So I think the panelists from the OEMs, we had Bluebird, Cummins, Green Power Motor, IC Bus, and Thomas Built Buses. It had to be kind of metered in what they say. That's just, you have to expect that from the OEMs. There's so much R&D going on right now, and so much with school bus is taken from truck. So truck is really the litmus test for where companies are going with their technology to meet all the different regulations. And something to keep in mind is that with truck, the field test for any new technology can be a runway of several years. In school bus, the field testing is done by the school districts in real time. So that it's a tricky situation. So we did have that conversation. 2 days before we had the assassination attempt on former President Trump at that campaign stop in Pennsylvania. Then we had the panel. Of course, we ended the expo. Trump then accepted the nomination at the Republican National Convention. Within like 2 or 3 days, President Biden, after steadfastly saying he was not going to step down from campaigning, did so. And the heir apparent now appears to be Vice President Kamala Harris, who, of course, has been a big advocate for electric school buses. President Trump has said pretty publicly that he kind of walked it back a little bit. He in his acceptance speech at the RNC, he talked about ending the electric mandate on day one. Of course, there is no electric mandate, but he walked it back. I saw a couple of interviews a couple of days later where he said, "Hey, look, I believe in EVs, but it's not for everybody, and you can't force people to accept EVs." And I'm thinking, wow, it sounds kind of like the school bus industry. So on one hand, we've been talking about, are we going to ever see this, money from the feds, like we have this 5-year, $5 billion new EPA clean school bus program, which, by the way, 98% of the money so far has gone to electric, although propane and CNG are eligible. And we've talked about it, Tony, several times about, we don't know if we'll ever see money like that again. Might we, if Harris actually does win the nomination here? She's got to actually technically go to the Democratic National Convention here in a couple of weeks and accept that. But everything is trending towards looking like she's going to get that. But if she wins in November, what does that mean for electric school buses? Certainly, she's got Congress to that she would need to contend with on that, and we need to see how the congressional races shape up as well. That might be even more important in the long run than the actual president, because the presidents, when they're running on the campaign trail, it's one thing what they say. It's another that what they do or what they can do, what they can actually accomplish. So. It took a little bit of a look there. We try to stay out of the politics pool, but I analyzed a little bit just from a standpoint of a green bus and talking about what does this mean for propane, what does it mean for diesel. We don't know yet, but it certainly gives a lot of fodder for conversation, Tony.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan, Kamala Harris had introduced a bill in California for electric school buses. Now,
it was in the Senate, actually.
Oh, Senate? Okay, got it. Yeah.
She authored or jointly authored one of the first bills back in 2019. And that only called for $2 million. And there were several. I mean, I lost count of all the different bills and companion bills that were introduced in either the House or the Senate. But hers was for $2 million. And then we saw them grow from there. And eventually they kind of consolidated into what the final bill was from Senator Patty Murray in Washington that made it into the bipartisan infrastructure bill that became that $5 billion pot for EPA. And she definitely was the person that President Biden tapped to go out and get on the circuit and talk about electric school buses. President Biden, he made a couple of appearances as well, but Harris definitely took the mantle for that one. So definitely, I think that we're going to see part of this industry very excited about seeing Harris running. I think we're going to see another part of the industry that's very anxious about seeing her running. And you could say the same thing for President Trump as well. So it's definitely going to be an interesting fall here as we start to get into the dog days of summer. But check that out, that column again. Head over to stnonline.com and go to our digital edition page And you can read that in our August issue, along with all of the other great articles.
Wonderful, Ryan. And then before we dive into our interview with Mike Ippolito from School Radio, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the different court rulings? We also had some NTSB letters voicing DEA concerns. What's going on with all that?
Yeah, well, first of all, you mentioned the court decision. So those of you who were in Reno or read the article, there on July 16th before the daytime trade show, we had Keith Kruger, who is the executive director of the Consortium for School Networking. So talking about IT and all this technology, we had him. He talked a lot about E-rate. So of course that's been a big topic of conversation in the industry. FCC last fall finally approving school bus Wi-Fi hotspots as eligible funding under E-rate. That's that federal program funded by the Universal Service Fund that came about from the 1996 Telecommunications Act, and has traditionally funded internet for school campuses and for libraries. And there's been, this goes back, I think, in the 90s. We had, folks in Congress that were pushing for school bus applicability for E-rate, and it finally came to fruition. Controversially, it was a very partisan issue. So the three Democrats on the FCC board approved it. The two Republicans voted no, but it is the law of the land, if you will. And there has been some fights in court. And actually, Keith referred to both of them, really, but one of them looking at the constitutionality of the Universal Service Fund. So I mentioned that earlier. That's what the FCC uses to fund a lot of their programs. Well, last week, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, they ruled opposite of what the Ninth and 11th Circuit Courts had previously ruled. They ruled that the USF was allowable, but the Fifth Circuit Court last week said that the USF is unconstitutional. And that's basically that USF is a tax, really, that we all pay on our phone bills. And that goes to fund these different programs that FCC does, especially that are geared toward low-income and disadvantaged communities. And that's where a lot of what we see E-rate, as well as now the school bus hotspots. That's what they're going to do, is to we have the Learning Without Limits initiative from FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel. That's the name put to this program that includes the hot spots for school buses and under E-rate. So as of right now, there is no change, but there's a lot of concern. I reached out to Keith Kruger about this. He's actually on vacation in Paris for the Olympics, and he responded and he emailed me back and said, "Oh, it's just a mess." So there still needs to be a lot figured out, but it's, from what I've read, it looks like this could be an issue that goes before the U.S. Supreme Court next year, and then all bets are off on what's going to happen. So get it while it's hot, folks, with the E-rate. I mean, the funding window is already closed. The funds have already been dispersed for this current fiscal school year, but suddenly E-rate for school buses, that appears to be vulnerable. So time will tell.
All right, guys, we'll take a quick break and a few more headlines coming up. Hey, guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN Expo in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards voted on by STN Expo attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO Antonio Civitella said the recognition means so much because it's voted on by STN Expo attendees. Civitella said, "We know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents." Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com. All right, we're back. Ryan, hit us with some more headlines.
Yeah. So also too, something we had talked about previously, earlier this year, the Biden administration had announced their intent to remove marijuana as a Schedule I drug. That's perplexed a lot of people that marijuana would be up there with cocaine and heroin and opiates and whatnot. But certainly the Democrats have been looking at this issue for a long time, and we wondered out loud, well, what would this do for the federal commercial driver licensing regulations? Certainly, of course, with the CDL and with school bus specifically, those safety sensitive jobs, they have very strict drug and alcohol testing, and marijuana is one of those disqualifying tests. So I asked FMCSA about that earlier this year, and they said, "Oh, there's no change." They pointed out it would still have to go through rulemaking to actually have this declassified. The DEA would be handling that, but they didn't foresee any changes coming. Well, it was interesting. Also last week, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, they sent a letter to DEA voicing their concern about this issue for commercial drivers and school bus drivers. So certainly, NTSB is concerned enough that they're petitioning DEA to say, "Hey, wait a second, time out. We need to really look at this closely." Again, we're keeping our thumb on the pulse of this topic as well, seeing how this shakes out. I think it's going to be something that we're not going to see anytime too soon in terms of any rulemaking to declassify marijuana or as that Schedule I drug and what that would look like. But certainly NTSB already now is loudly proclaiming, "Hey, wait a second, listen to us," and they're I'm sure galvanizing some support. So all you student transporters out there, folks at the state level especially, pay attention to this, because we probably will see some comment periods coming sometime over the next 6 months, year, that's looking at this topic.
All right, Ryan, I know the NASDIP's illegal passing survey came out. I believe it was right around STN Expo, and not a surprise, more and more illegal passing is happening, and it cites fatalities, injuries. It's very concerning that this is at an epidemic level, and it's not subsiding.
No, it actually was released at NSTA, so right after Reno. But yeah, this is the 12th voluntary survey. So they get a one-day count, basically, different states that participate. And this year it was 35 states. And it was 98,000, just over 98,000 school bus drivers participated. So that's about a fourth or so of the school bus drivers in the nation. And they found that there were 66,322 motorists observed illegally passing the school bus on a given day. And what NASDIPS likes to do is they like to extrapolate that, look across the 50 states all the school buses over 180-day school year. And they said that could equate to 45.2 million illegal passing violations. So certainly on an increase. To put it in perspective, the previous school year, 22-23, NASDAQ has extrapolated the about 62,500 motorists observed. That was about 43.5 million across all 50 states and DC. So certainly going up. And it's not a scientific survey, obviously, and individual school bus drivers nationwide and transportation directors and supervisors have their own horror stories and their own experience to back this up. It's certainly a problem. So NASDAQ has been trying to keep their finger on the pulse of this issue. And but it's interestingly, we need to keep in mind that still, and it goes to the training. I think when you were talking about people earlier, Tony, that there's not more kids that are killed. Now, we don't have a good idea of the injuries. We just see what's reported in the nation's press, and it could be in the several dozens to the hundreds. We don't really know. The shame is that I've yet to talk to someone who's willing to pick up a more recent study on the number of students who are injured in school bus incidents. You'll recall that the American Academy of Pediatrics did a study, I think it was about 15 years ago or so. And it's maybe 10 years ago. And it's been a while, and they cited, I think it was about 13,000 injuries over a 3-year span, but there's no stomach for taking that up again. So certainly something that we're interested here in STN. I've talked with the lead author of that. I believe he's retired now and doesn't have any desire to look into that. But certainly, if you're listening to this out in the nation and you are a researcher, contact us, talk to us about it, because that's one of the things that this industry is so focused on safety, and the focus is so much on the low fatality count. But we lose sight, I think, too often of the injuries. But interesting article about this survey and what it says. So again, head over to stnonline.com. It breaks down the direction that motorists were traveling in when these incidences were recorded. And 97% of them, so almost always, they're passing on the left side of the bus. But that especially troubling 3% that NASDAQ has been railing about for years is occurring on the right side. We saw a fatality last year, Tony, where a driver looked up and didn't see the school bus or whatever was happening, distraction, and they veered to the right, clipped the very back bumper of the school bus, and careened into a student who was standing there waiting to get on the bus and killed her. So very tragic. Again, one of those things, very important survey to look at. It's not a perfect survey, but it does shed a lot of light on this issue.
Yeah, safety is really top of mind, Ryan, I think, for all school transportation professionals out there. And we see that in our surveys, we see it at STN Expo, always so important. So our next interview with Mike Ippolito from School Radio is going to talk about emergency situations, how communications are key for that. So I'm real excited to dive into that interview, and you guys have a listen. All right, guys, we have a special guest, buddy I was hanging out with actually at STN Expo in Reno, Mike Ippolito, General Manager for School Radio, Digitalk Plus, A-Beep. You guys have a few names, Mike, but you're known more probably for School Radio in our market. So welcome to the podcast. Great seeing you and hearing you.
You too, Tony. We had a great time at STN. It was great seeing you and catching up. And yeah, we have a lot of names. We're under a lot of different things here.
Yeah, you want to give a little deeper dive on who school radio is, kind of what are the solutions you have out in the market right now?
Yeah, so I'll just back up real quick about who we are. So you mentioned ABEEP. So we've been in business since 1995. We are at our heart a two-way radio company. So we do everything two-way radio, public safety work, push to talk for school buses, cement, concrete, construction, you name it, we do it. We actually operate a very large radio system in the Chicagoland area. So we're actually located in Joliet, which is about 40 minutes south of Chicago. So we offer a very large terrestrial-based system there, bunch of towers, but it's all landlocked into our coverage footprint on our Kenwood equipment. About 8 years ago, we started playing around with what is now affectionately known as push-to-talk over cellular, which instead of leveraging towers that we own with all that infrastructure and all that crazy stuff and that cost that goes along with it, we decided to start leveraging cell towers and the major carriers to provide push-to-talk service. And it was a natural progression for us. We do subscriber-based radio. I think we do it well. So we started out with a Digitalk Plus product, and it's a full product line. We have 3 portables, 3 mobiles. We offer all kinds of stuff with that: group calling, private calling, GPS tracking, all that stuff that you'd love to have in your communication solution. Fast forward a little bit, that's successful now. We have 100 plus dealers nationwide selling for us. And we were kind of like, what are we doing next? What is the next big thing that we're going to do? Because we're always looking forward. And we started looking at all our verticals, and who we primarily service. And it was interesting because between both of our standard radio, I'll call it, our regular old school radio that everybody's used to, and our new push to talk product, I would say over 50 to 75% of our end users were all schools or transportation fleets. So it was kind of natural for us to start looking at what we can do in that space. And school radio was born from that. So school radio is pretty much the same backbone, the same stellar service and push to talk communications with group and private calling and all that Digitalk Plus has. But the radios are cute. They're yellow and black. But the real claim to the fame of that was the fact that we developed what we call a managed services program. We really tried to attack one of the largest concerns that we were always told in the school and transportation market, which was budgeting and concerns about repairs and how much money you're be spending on things during the year. And from that, we decided to develop this managed services program, which basically allows the school to pay a single fee. Or the transportation department a single fee. There's no upfront cost to the customer, and they just pay us monthly, and we cover everything. They get the entire service, whatever levels of service they'd like as far as the features that we offer. And if they run a radio over with a school bus or drop coffee in it, we just replace it, no questions asked. So we really try to initially, solve that budgetary problem and give them a way to get into this at a really low cost. And a lot of people do take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The OpEx model definitely works very well for school district buyers out there. CapEx, you got to go out for bid. There's a big, long process. It takes forever. This kind of addresses the key budgetary challenge. That's, kudos to you guys for developing a great program for school transportation departments to take advantage of. Now, I know from STN Expo, we do a lot of research, and I found it interesting that when we did our transportation director summit in which you guys participated for the first time, communication systems was one of the highest interest products. And that kind of was surprised. I was like, communication systems, it feels so natural in a school bus. But, what do you see in those conversations? Are people still using cell phones? Are they distracted? Because, they're not supposed to be using cell phones, but, people turn a blind eye or they've got their personal device,
Right.
I don't know. Right. So what are you hearing and seeing at the conference when you're interacting with attendees? What are they telling you?
Well, Tony, you pretty much just hit on everything, so I guess we're done. Communications is important, and it does, when you really start digging into it, you start realizing that it does cover all those things. I'll touch on the first one, efficiency. We tell everybody, we went over this at the Directors Summit, that a standard phone call takes about 2 minutes and 40 seconds to actually relay the information that you want to relay. in a push to talk scenario, using our radios, it takes about 20 seconds. So we're talking about efficiency, and then efficiency bleeds over into everything else from the safety on the bus. So if you're waiting 2 minutes to get a driver to get out the information about the accident they were just in or the incident that's going on the bus, because they have to now dial a number, get on the phone, they have to pull over. So it kind of starts solving a multitude of problems when you start really looking at it. So efficiency, safety of the drivers and the students, being able to get that information out quickly and clearly and to as many people, or believe it or not, as minimal amount of people that are supposed to hear it. We have fleets, for example, that when there is an emergency situation, we've actually helped them put SOPs in place on how to deal with that and to be able to switch to another channel and be able to have that emergency communication quickly and easily with just the dispatcher without the rest of the entire fleet hearing it. And then you have the security issue as well. Being able to have those secure communications back and forth that can't be intercepted by scanners or the general public. They're over the carrier systems. These transmissions are encrypted, which again, when you look at it and go, well, that's not that important. But in today's world, security really is. So our communication solution, or our communications in general, kind of starts touching on all these points, which become critical for a bus operation. And sometimes, I'll be honest, they get overlooked. We got a lot of that at the expo or at the Director Summit as well, where they were sitting with us and we were going through these points. And they were like, wow, we've invested a ton of money in cameras. We've invested a ton of money in X or Y. We didn't even think we should be doing this because our drivers are still using phones. And every time there's a problem, they got to pull the bus over and they got to make a phone call to the dispatcher. And sometimes their phones don't work, or they're using their personal cell phones. That's a budget issue for us, or a privacy issue. So it really does start solving a multitude of issues just from an operational standpoint.
That's interesting that you would address that in that way, because it becomes a pain point people don't even realize that they have. And if you start to extrapolate that out, that ends up being a lot of man hours and a lot more efficiency. And I guess in an emergency, seconds matter,
right,
especially in an emergency, right? And be able to communicate effectively and efficiently makes a ton of sense to me. Hey, that's interesting too, the reaction, because your typical bus, everybody's like, yeah, I have a radio. And the radio's function is A to B, but nobody's thinking about all the kind of nuance in between.
Right, which is, I think, some of the stuff that we bring to light with this. So, if I had to go to the secondary reasons why people want to talk to us, and a lot of things that came up at the Directors Summit, which was fantastic, by the way. We had a great time. I mean, it was, and everything that we talked about fit into our model, which was great. But coverage issues is the other thing. A lot of people sat down with us and like, hey, we have a current radio system, but there's a lot of spots where the radios don't cover. And then we can't get that safety and security, that feeling that if we have an emergency, we could call somebody. How do you solve that? Well, we use carriers. We use multiple carriers in those situations. So, we can probably resolve your coverage problems so you have coverage in those areas. The other big one that we got was aging equipment. A lot of them sat down with us and said, yeah, our radio's got to be 30 years old. They're hanging on with duct tape and a thread. And we're looking to step up into the next thing. And this starts to become the next logical evolution. And then the rest of it is just the features that the system offers. Being able to GPS track. And we realize that there's much larger GPS platforms out there, but ours is really great if you just want to see where your bus is right now and where they are while they're talking. We have dispatch software and iOS and Android applications if you rather use those to talk to the buses. And then, of course, the group and private calling. And the funny joke at our tables became customers asking us, well, how many channels can we have? Can we have all these features? Because we don't have those now with our current radio system. And our answer is always, well, how many channels do you want? You can kind of do whatever you need. You want a field trip channel? You got it. You want a secondary channel for your special education buses? We can do that for you too. And there's no additional cost to them. So, for all these reasons, it starts to become almost a no-brainer for them to look at switching.
Yeah, and you just touched on it. I guess my next question was, why should people switch to push to talk over cellular, right? Because POC, you hear the acronym and you're like, wait, what does that mean? Push to talk over cellular. So you touched on the ability to have more coverage. You touched on the ability to, in essence, allow the drivers to have multiple channels to work within versus a cell phone, which is one way, right? You call
Right.
the number and maybe they pick up, maybe they don't. Is it timely? It leaves a lot of holes, right?
Right.
In those moments.
Right. And using the carriers, there's things that you don't realize. A lot of the questions we get, well, what if the carrier goes down? And we get that a lot, and we understand that. But it also comes down to, okay, well, who are you currently dealing with? Well, I'm dealing with a radio shop. He's been in business for 30, 40 years, and he's about 80 years old, and he's a single guy. And we get that a lot. The two-way radio business as a traditional business is aging. So if he has an outage, you have a major problem, one of your towers goes down on his system, how long is it going to take him to possibly get that system back up? And they kind of sit there and they think about that. And then when you lead in afterwards with, well, if AT&T has an outage, first of all, they have towers everywhere. And I'm just using them as an example. They have towers everywhere. So the chances of your entire fleet being out are pretty slim. And they're also a multi-billion-dollar company. When a tower goes out and something happens, they tend to respond a lot quicker. And we have relationships with these carriers. So we have data that tells us when these sites are up and down so we can give it to customers when they need it. We can also leverage things like FirstNet, which you can't do on a traditional radio system, where we can give our end users in school radios platform access to FirstNet, which is AT&T's public safety network we sell to extended primary users. All of our radios are FirstNet certified. So we're able to get into that space and even give them that level of service if they're really worried and concerned about safety and security and keeping the system up. We have that available as well. So the bottom line is leveraging a cell system or a cellular-based system versus a traditional radio system opens up a world of possibilities for fleet configurations, options, features. A simple ability for us to be able to reprogram radios via a server and do it remotely without having to send a technician out to rename your bus from bus 10 to bus 15 because bus 10 was in an accident and you're moving it over somewhere else. All that stuff translates into everything we've been talking about, the efficiency of your fleet, not only from a communication standpoint, but from an uptime standpoint. And then again, back to that safety and security, making sure that the radios are working, make sure you have working equipment and it's working the way you need it to. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, you touched on it a little bit, and I want to bring it up, right? You guys are a family company, right? This is not some mega conglomerate where they're going to call and they're not going to get a human being. It's not going to be AI Mike picking up. It's going to be a real person that addresses their needs, and it sounds like you're very responsive to customers in that need.
We are. I think that's one of the biggest things we pride ourselves on. Both our reseller partners and our end users will tell you that, I mean, we have a response line that's 24/7, 365, all hours of the day and night. If someone calls us with a problem, we usually resolve it pretty quick. Or if we can't resolve it, we at least have a working knowledge of what the problem is and what our resolution and what the resolution time is going to be. But yeah, when you call our office, you're getting a person on the phone to talk to you about whatever the issue is and to help work through it. As well as our technical staff. So yeah, the short answer is yes, we are a small company, but a very large nationwide footprint. We average, or we actually manage tens of thousands of end user devices across the country. So, we have this pretty much down to a science at this point. Like I said, push to talk is what we do. It's what we're good at.
Before we wrap up, you want to leave us with maybe a success story of where you deployed a radio system and the positive impact it had on the school district or company you were working with?
I think it was about a year ago, we deployed radios for Cumberland County Schools in North Carolina. They have 600 plus radios that we actually went out and installed. And it was across, I can't even tell you at this point how many schools it was. It's an entire county. But it allowed them to have communications throughout the entire area. to allow their school buses to talk to their individual schools. All their schools are kind of assigned to individual buses, so they were able to have those communications privately. So we were able to do it so it wasn't all in a big clear with a big all-call group where all the schools were hearing each other. They're all kind of dedicated to their specific areas, which again allowed them to work more efficiently and safely, in their districts. We also work with Chicago bus sales in the Chicagoland area, they're both on our traditional radio system as well as school radio and Digitalk Plus. They kind of operate across all three of our major systems. They're one of our largest customers. But again, similar, while they're a privately held transportation company, it has allowed us to streamline their communications and give them a unified solution, which is something that we constantly push, especially for those larger school districts out there. You really need a single solution that spans the entire district for so many reasons, from a platform management standpoint, from an interoperability standpoint, so schools can talk to each other, or transportation, buses can talk to each other in the case of an emergency. So those are two. We have many more. Our largest customer right now is 1,400 plus devices. So the system is as scalable as it needs to be.
Mike, if someone wants to get in touch with you, who do they call? Is it they call Mike Ippolito? You have a phone number? You got a website? Where do they go?
The best thing they could do is email us at sales@school-radio.com, or just go to our website at www.school-radio.com. There's a contact us form that actually goes right to my inbox, and then I give it out to our salespeople to reach out. So either one of those methods is probably the fastest and easiest way to get a hold of us. Those leads are usually responded to in less than 24 hours. And with those leads usually end up being a free demo. We do demo units for, there's no obligation or anything for the end user to give them a try. So that's the easiest way. So that's www.school-radio.com, and just go to the contact us form and fill it out.
Beautiful. Love hearing that. Guys, if you drop Mike an email, make sure you mention you heard him on the STN podcast. Give him some props. It's his first time on a podcast, so we got to give him some love. Got to give him some love. Well, I appreciate you coming on, talking about some important topics: safety, communication systems, efficiency. Some great nuggets in there, Mike, for our listeners to take away and really kind of marinate on, but really a valuable conversation. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge with us.
Oh, thank you, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity. And as always, you guys at STN are fantastic. Like I told you at the show, we had a fantastic time in Reno. The Director Summit was great. We had great conversations with a lot of people and directors out there, and it was just a wonderful opportunity. And really can't wait to continue our relationship with you guys. So thank you. On our end to you.
Likewise. Hey, special thanks to Mike Ippolito at School Radio for jumping on. Mr. Ryan Gray, always a fountain of knowledge in the school transportation industry. Thank you for being here, Ryan, and sharing your knowledge with us. Also, special thanks to our podcast sponsors, TransFinder, Ride, and School Radio. We appreciate you guys for always supporting the podcast here at STN. Guys, you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to pods. Make sure to share it with other people in the transportation department, in your company, in your community. Put it out on social media. We are School Transportation News, so you can find us, hashtag us. Definitely get it out there. We'd love to see it at some of our conferences this summer. We have one in the fall, since STN Expo's, in the rearview mirror. We got the Transporting Students with Disabilities and Special Needs Conference, November 7th through the 12th, down in Dallas, Texas, in a suburb called Frisco. We'd love to see you out there. It's tsdconference.com. Our super early bird rate to save $200 is ending soon. So go on there, make sure and you register. If you have anything to do with school transportation and special needs, this is the conference for you. We have specialized training. You want to raise your knowledge, get some hands-on training. It's really a special conference, guys. Really dives deep into a lot of the legal precedents, talks to alternative student transportation. We really talk about operational challenges and everything having to do with the full spectrum of special needs children. It's really a must attend if you are in the special needs industry. So tsdconference.com, lock in that super early bird rate before it ends here in August. All right, guys. Well, we love you, nation. We appreciate you listening, being a part of the podcast every week. We'll see you next week. We love you, nation.